Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is DMAC, and today I'm going to do a little video on the tools that I use for making pins, challenge locks and that sort of thing. I'm sure there's some of you that know that I quite like making challenge locks, and quite in particular I think I really enjoy making pins, putting them together and just coming up with more ingenious ways to frustrate other people in the locksport community. So I'd like to do a series of videos on how I go about making pins, how I go about making challenge locks, and this was just an introductory video into some of the equipment that I use. Of course, other people use other equipment, but for me, so far this has worked for me, and just wanted to talk about some of the things that I use, and hopefully, it can help you if you want to go on that journey yourself. First bit of equipment is a multi-tool of some description. This is a Dremel 4000. This is a recent acquisition for me. Up until now I'd been using a no-name multi-tool that I'd got from a local DIY store. It did okay, it was fairly cheap, lasted me years and years. Eventually, just very recently, it kind of wore out, and I ended up deciding to invest in a branded machine, because I think for pin making, I mean, you're dealing with tiny little pins. We're talking sort of like 3mm diameter brass rods, essentially. I'll get that in focus. There we go. That the collet's got to hold, and years and years, well, not years but months, or of working away at those with various abrasive tools just took its toll on the collet. So my machine gave up the ghost. So yeah, I bought this Dremel 4000, and so far it's absolutely fantastic, very nice and very accurate as well. I mean, I like to use it with the flex extension. So this is the business end that I use. I know some people like to clamp these in a vise, so it's essentially a mini lathe, and then machine their pins that way. Personally, I like to hold this. I generally will hold this in the left hand. I'll fasten a pin in the collet there and use various tools to sort of work away at it. So we've got some sort of engraving bit in there now. Just take that one out. So fastening the 3mm brass pin in there, and then, like I say, using various abrasive tools with this section spinning at speed, just wore out the end of the collet. So that led to me getting this one. I mean, the basic process of making pins for challenge locks is to take a standard pin like this one here, just a standard brass pin, fix him in the end. Just fasten this one up. Fix them in the end of your Dremel or multi-tool there. Obviously done up with a spanner. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. And then use a variety of tools to carve different shapes in there, into the pin, to sort of carve security pin features, that sort of thing. It's just a case of what tools you use to do that. I think initially I used a hacksaw, and I wasn't particularly happy with the cuts. They were quite rounded, they weren't quite as sharp as I wanted. This currently is my go-to tool for a lot of cuts that I use in challenge lock pins. Fairly cheap hacksaw blade and holder, but this one particularly, this one currently actually, this area here is particularly sharp and leads to some particularly sharp cuts. So we spin the Dremel up to speed, we just hold the tool on it at the area that we want to cut in, and hold it for the amount of time that will give us the depth of cut that we want, and then pull away. And using that tool, let's just grab my tweezers. So just there, this is looks like a key keep in there possibly. Oh no, it's a driver pin. So I've used that hacksaw to create this cut at the end, which has given us a fairly sharp cut there. Looks like we've also got a light serration there, which I'll go into in just a sec. But yeah, so this tool was clamped in the end of the Dremel flex there, and then I've used this hacksaw there to cut into it to create that little step, sharp little step on there. Another tool, I think initially I struggled with getting quality sort of cuts on my pins. The hacksaw only took me so far, and I was recommended to get some needle files. I tried various different types of needle files. I've got a whole box here of different types of files, and in the end I settled on these diamond files, which are, I'm not sure what set this was. This was just come off of eBay. Various different profiles there. I think I probably use these two most out of any of these files. This one in particular is great. If I cut that spool shape with the hacksaw, this one has got some particularly sharp cuts. There you go. Of various different sort of thicknesses, depending on how far up or down the shaft of the file we go, which can create some nice sharp features. But yeah, we've got a square profile there, flat profile, cylindrical profile there. You can just play about to get whatever cuts you want. I then wanted to really get into sort of doing some fine serrations. I'm not sure if I've got any here. Let's just have a look. Yeah, there's one there. Let's just have a look at this pin. So I wanted to cut these fine serrations, as you can see there on that pin. Quite like the sort of pins you get in a standard sort of American 1100, that sort of thing, and I struggled to find anything that was fine enough to cut it. I was recommended various different blades, Stanley blades or X-Acto blades, scalpel blades, that sort of thing, to cut into the brass, but I didn't get any satisfactory results until someone on Facebook recommended one of these, which is a jeweler's saw. And this has a super fine blade. I mean, it's almost like a filament there. You can just about feel the rough surface there on the cutting side. It's essentially pretty much the same as a hacksaw blade, but ultra fine. I mean, ultra fine. This was fairly cheap. Found this one on eBay. Fully adjustable. Came with a set of blades. You get a set of these filaments. And inevitably, because they're quite weak, they do snap, but because this section here, you've got these little release clamps there, you can move this up and down the shaft here, so that if you were to snap the blade, you can just shorten the length of the blade, moving this section forward, and you can get quite a lot of life out of this blade. I think I got a pack of I don't know, it's like 10 or 20 that came with the saw. Well, I think I'm only on sort of blade 5 or something like that, so they do last a long time. Absolutely fantastic piece of kit, and like I say, you can use that to get those fine serrations. Another tool that I like to use quite a lot, let me just find something in my tray here to demonstrate it. You can just see there we've got this little ring. So this is cut from a 3mm pin, and yeah, I've managed to put a hole all the way through the middle of this, and this is used in rattlesnake pins, or quite often in pinning pins, where you've essentially got to hollow out a 3mm brass pin, and what I use for that is this pin vise. Absolutely fantastic little hobby pin vise. Not sure what diameter this bit is, but I think it's about I think it's 1.5mm. So the way this works is we fix a pin there. This is a 3mm pin in the vise. Sorry, in the collet there of the multi-tool. We get this spinning up to speed, and what you do is you just use this 1.5mm bit. Just trying to get this in focus for you. Generally, I just do this by hand. You know, some people, like I say, will fix this end in a vise, and that's great. You know, but for me, I like to do it by hand and adjust it as necessary. Once this is spun up to speed, you just place the end of the pin vise on the end of the pin there, and it will self-center. You know, you've just, as long as you're not sort of drilling at some sort of crazy angle like that, you just keep it fairly straight. This pin vise, the drill bit there, will find its way all the way through the pin, completely hollow it out, and then once we've got a hollow pin with a 1.5mm hole down the middle, we can then use this jeweler's saw, again, once this is spun up to speed, just to sort of cut sections off that. And once we cut those sections off, we'll be left with something like that, which we can use in various pins. Like I say, this one's probably cut for a rattlesnake pin, which I'm going to do a specific video on to show how I go about making those rattlesnake pins. But yeah, that's an integral part of that. Other tools that I might use as well. We've discussed the files. So when you buy the Dremel, you'll get various sort of buffing bits and cutting bits, and these ones here, which I think are engraving bits. Let's just grab one of these. There we go. So these are engraving bits. So I use these for engraving. I mean, I'll quite often I'll sign my my challenge locks and perhaps, you know, give it a name, so I'll use one of these engraving bits. But the other thing that these can be used for is undercuts on the core. So as well as obviously making modifications to pins, that sort of thing, we can do various things to these core holes. So I use this engraving bit here to make undercuts. So again, this is fixed into the into the collet there, spun up to speed, and what we do is we're putting it in these in the core sort of holes there, and using a circular motion like that, rotating it around. Once it's spun up to speed, it will cut a channel, a ridge essentially, inside that core, and that will hopefully interact with just grab that pin again. Pins like this, where we've got that nice sharp step in the end of the core. And once we've got that channel cut out in this in these core holes, those pins will then jam in there. So it's a great bit of kit to sort of to make those undercuts in there. We can also use it just in there. We can see we can see those holes there. You can just about reach through to chamber 1 to make undercuts there. Some locks come with holes cut out in the bottom of the body there. And the tool can be used to go through those into those spring chambers as well to make those undercuts. Another great tool for making modifications to here in the core is a tap. So I like to use this one here. I've got a holder there somewhere. Yeah, so I've got a holder there, and this is a 3.5mm tap. And there we go. And that can be used to thread these core chambers quite successfully. Very easy, just a case of winding it into those core holes there, and then we can get a nice thread on these cores, which can interact with serrated pins, that sort of thing. And also you can sometimes remove these pins and thread the entire spring chamber as well. On some locks, some Yale rim cylinders, they've got holes on this side, and we can go in from that from the bottom of the core, or the top of the core, depending on which way you look at it, down and into those spring chambers as well to fully thread those. And that's going to interact with various serrations and things that we've put onto these pins. and there we've got some nice serrations, we've got some spooled areas there, and if we've got any sort of serrations, any sort of threading going on in the core or the Bible, these are going to interact really well with those to give us all sorts of problems, really. I think that's probably most of the tools that I would use for making modifications to challenge locks and pins. But yeah, using those tools, I'm just going to grab some pins up here so you can see some of the modifications we can make. You can make some rather nice looking pins there to cause all sorts of problems. This pin here, I think this was actually made from a section of threaded bar that I had. I just cut that down. Just grab that out, just bear with me. So that was a section of brass threaded bar that I bought. I'm not sure the diameter, it's less than 3mm anyway. And then I just cut these pins down and put like a spooled section on there. So if we were to put this pin into a threading on the core that we just discussed using that tap, it would cause all sorts of problems. Yeah, and various different shapes we can use using various different tools that I've just discussed, but I'll go through making all these pins in a later video. So what we can use is, as far as making challenge locks, we can either just disassemble a lock and utilize all the key pins and the driver pins. I think these ones here came from that particular lock, so they're just blank. We can fix any of those in the Dremel and make various cuts to those. But the other thing you can use is a kit like this, a pinning kit, which I use fairly often there in challenge lock making. So it comes with various sizes of pins, and these are intended to be key pins. So if we just look at one of those there, we can see we've got a rounded end there and a flat end on this side because it's intended as a key pin, so the key would brush past this rounded end, and then your shear line would be on this side on the left. We can of course use any of these pins in here as challenge lock pins. We've just got to use the flat end as the shear line pin, have it in the key line position, and make various cuts and things on those pins like I've done there. I've just got a couple of serrations on that one, nothing too challenging, but we can go crazy with it. And I find that these pins from the pinning kits are very good. They're very soft and very easy to cut using various tools like the jeweler's saw and the hacksaw, and the various files we looked at to make all sorts of crazy shapes to cause all sorts of problems to people. So I think that's a basic kit that I use to make all my challenge pins, and I look forward to uploading some videos in the coming weeks to sort of detail how I do it. I think I'm going to do a specific video on making rattlesnake pins. I don't actually have any examples of those here. They're basically it's a spool, and on that spool you've got several of these discs which can move freely up and down that spooled section. Very nice pins, very interesting to pick. So I'll do a specific video on those. I'll also do other videos on how to make various cuts using the tools we've discussed today for your challenge lock, and also all the modifications that I would do to the core, to the Bible, and perhaps to the key, and how to sort of create a challenging challenge lock, which essentially is what we want to do. But there you go. That's just some pointers initially and on the bits that I would use, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos, and hopefully you can like, comment and subscribe on this video, and hopefully I'll see you in future videos where we can go through this in more depth. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.